MandicLabs 2.0, brought to you by Prusa Research and PCBWay, has been growing exponentially. The left side of the studio is getting built out beautifully with my Prusa print farm of filament printers. The other side of the space, however, well, that's a different story. I intend to build a full wall of pallet rack workstations over here, getting me both storage and more manufacturing capability for my projects, but I don't have it just yet. I've got big plans for that wall, but I currently can't afford the time or the expense of setting it up. I do want to get things rolling in the right direction, though. I've got plans for a laser cutter, an electronics workbench for soldering and tinkering projects, and a full resin printing setup, which is why I was excited when the folks at HeyGears reached out about sponsoring a video on their new Reflex 2 Resin 3D printer. It's the excuse I need to start this project. When HeyGears reached out about sponsoring this video, they said, do whatever I actually want to do with resin printing. They don't require that I talk about any specific thing when it comes to their machine, just what I want to do with it and how it works for my application. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run a handful of prints on this new machine and see how it does in the applications that I have for it. Like I said, HeyGears didn't really require that I talk about the machine itself, but I'm a nerd for this stuff and I want to share. There's timestamps in the description if you want to skip this part. Now, I'm not a resin printing person, but I want to focus on the things I think are neat. It's got a laser etched Bestagon build plate on it. That's not that unique. I just like the way it looks, and it's going to help with first layer adhesion. It's 2025, so the machine of course has wired and wireless network connectivity options on it. Overall, the design of the machine is pretty beefy. The bottom is die-cast aluminum for the main structure with a clean electronics box featuring a main board running a Rockchip processor and eMMC storage. The Z-axis has a beefy NEMA 23 motor to really have some peel force on it, and it uses HGN heavy-duty linear rails and a ball screw for high precision movement. There's more to talk about, but we should probably get the hardware set up so you can see it in action and we can talk about it then. So here is my temporary resin printing station set up atop of a FlexiSpot standing desk I have. I usually avoid temporary because it becomes permanent rather quickly. But I'm really happy I'm doing it this time because it's showing me where I could use a little more space and maybe plan out some wall hangers for things, tools I might need here. So temporary is informing permanent in this situation. So let's get started with a real world fun 3D printing project. I've got this StreamDeck module, which is a StreamDeck without a housing. You're supposed to make your own or integrate it yourself. I designed up this housing for it so that I can mount it around the studio and have it look the way I want. But the way I want it to look is transparent. I want 90s style. So in comes this PAT10 transparent resin. But clear, that's not nearly as fun. How about a couple of dots of purple resin dye into it? I ended up transferring this back to the bottle and shaking it up to really get it nicely mixed, but it turned out excellent, I think. Then we can send it to print. Let the machine do its auto level, which, did I mention it has auto leveling? I hate leveling resin printers, so I love this feature. 6 hours and 123 grams of resin later, we've got what I think is a sick looking housing. I am loving this. It needs to run through the HeyGears wash machine and the curing station, both of which have selectable resin settings as well as manual settings. So you could just select what resin you used and it'll wash for the proper amount of time and cure for the proper amount of time. After washing and curing, of course, some of the shine and the transparency of the print was lost. So I know what I'm going to do. First things first, I need to deal with the support bumps on the bottom of the print. It's just the nature of the beast when it comes to resin printing. So I'm going to go ahead and sand these down, starting with 220 grit sandpaper and working my way up to 600 grit. Once I was done sanding, I ran it through a quick wash in the wash station again just to get the dust off of it. And now we can clear coat these. The clear coat will help to bring back the transparency and give it the shine that it had fresh out of the resin vat. With the parts cleared, I think they're looking great. They could maybe use another coat of clear, but I'm happy with where it's at. I'm going to run through the screw holes with an M3 drill tap. That'll get it ready to accept the hardware. Then it's as simple as inserting my StreamDeck and screwing down the faceplate onto the print. I think this turned out straight up 90s N64 vibes, and I love it. This project was so much fun and really got me excited about doing a lot more of this in projects in the future. For our second project, I want to go back to my car builder days and a business-like possibility: production resin printing. I did a lot of custom stainless hardline tubing in the projects that I built, and part of that is having to clamp your lines to frame rails or to each other. I've used a lot of off-the-shelf ones over the years, but I've also designed some 3D printable ones. Filament printed ones just never felt like a product I felt I could sell though, not compared to injection molded stuff, and that's where resin printing comes in. I'm going to take some of the designs that I've produced in the past and print a batch of them. Is something you can do with resin printing to see if the quality's up to the level I want and if I can hit a production rate that'll make sense for mass production to sell a product. For this particular use case, for my test printing anyway, I'm going to use the Tooling PAU20 resin. It's black and it has good mechanical properties, if not the temperature handling I might like. It's only rated to 60 Celsius on the HDT. My first impression of this stuff is it's thick with multiple C's. So it definitely makes sense why the Reflex 2 has a heated scraper. There's actually a heater element inside of this, so when it scrapes the bottom of the FEP and it's used to actually stir the material before a print, so it's good and evenly side to side, it also heats it so it'll flow better for better print quality and reliability. Material managed, it's time to lock in and run our parts. Of course, there's not a lot to film when it comes to resin printing, so a little while later, we've got a full batch of my clamp design printed in a production process. 4 hours and 14 minutes and 185 grams of material were used. There's going to be cleanup, of course, some that's going to be excess, like the stuff stuck to the plate or washed off with the print, so let's call it 200 grams of material. Considering the material we're using, the PAU20, and its cost, at 200 grams of material used, we produced 12 sets, so 12 front and 12 back halves of these clamps. So they cost $19.80 worth of material to produce, plus 4 hours of machine time, however you want to value that. The commercially available version of this type of product costs $25.95 for 4 clamps. Resin cost alone for a 4-pack of our clamps here would be $6.60. Including the hardware installed in them would be $7.40. So we could sell them for $10 less than the commercial ones, $15, and still turn a 50% profit margin on these. And I think the print quality is good enough to actually justify that. Something I forgot to note about the cure station is it's also a bake station. It heats up to 60 degrees Celsius to not only cure, but bake parts where engineering materials kind of require that to get the proper characteristics and strengths. Next up, I want to have a little fun before we do another technical test. I'm going to load up some of this PAP10, which is probably their most generic resin HeyGear has, and it's what you would usually use for miniatures or sculptures. So let's print some art stuff. While this is printing, I want to take a moment to appreciate that I personally love the design language of these machines. I think they are going to fit beautifully into my studio. I don't know how to express it, but the amber glow of this thing, it feels Blade Runner-y to me, and I love that it's going to be in the background of some of my shots. Personally, I've never been in love with resin printing, and not just because I don't do a lot of detail miniature stuff, but because it's overly complicated. Companies don't make it easy. They don't load up even their own slicer profiles for their own resins in their slicers. But HeyGear is making it way easier. Like I said, I can select the resin I need and get the right cure time, the right wash time, and even the wash and the cure stations both have over-the-air update capability with Wi-Fi. And of course, most importantly, I'm just getting gorgeous prints. Some might think that a 6K resolution is not enough, but I don't see any lacking in these prints. Aside from this one, definitely failed. It was the first print I ran. I don't know what happened here. probably down to my choice of orientation and support settings. But the other prints turned out gorgeous in every single print I've run, so I'm thrilled with these machines so far. Art fun out of the way, let's run one last test print with this serious engineering material, PAH 270. This stuff is rated at 270 degrees HDT, so this would be excellent for my tube clamps, and that is 270C, not Fahrenheit. Except this stuff is white. I think I might be able to tint this to various colors, but I'm gonna ask HeyGear about that before I start doing it. I might mess with the material properties if I just throw a random dye in. That said, I'm just gonna run a test print for this project. This material is pretty serious and requires the use of that unit to the left of the machine. That is the PRM2. That is the pulse release module. It is a small air compressor that blasts air around the FEP sheet to shake the print loose. That's my best understanding anyway. It makes the FEP last longer and reduces print time on these more challenging materials. You folks might be familiar with what it is I've printed as a test print. I think it's a great benchmark print. This is a Voron StealthBurner. I also printed one in ASA on the Bamboo H2D so we can compare. The one in PAH 270 was printed at 0.1 millimeter layer height, and the H2D print was at 0.2 using standard Voron specs. I mean, it's resin versus filament. This thing turned out beautiful, and I think it could be fun to use on a machine. Normally you wouldn't resin print tool head parts on a Voron, but I don't know. I think this was a pretty fun test print. It turned out beautiful, and it handles some heat. So, is this going to be a resin printing channel now? No, it's not. Still going to be filament prints in all of my projects and the primary focus of what I do when it comes to making projects. But I do have to say that the HeyGears Reflex 2, the hardware here, it is really making me reconsider how much I don't use resin in my projects, especially this transparent one. This StreamDeck thing turned out awesome. I love this, and I'm going to be doing a lot more of this. That is for sure. Before this setup came into my life, I haven't touched a resin printer in a long time. Since I moved from Philadelphia to the West Coast, my resin printers, there's one in a crate over there in the corner right now that has not left that crate since Philadelphia a year and a half ago. Yeah, this is a sponsored video, so take it as you will, but I've honestly had a great time using these. They've taken the friction that I don't like about resin printing out of the equation. I don't have to look up some random spec chart to find lift times and speeds and all that and program it in. I can just grab some resin from HeyGears, throw it in, slice it, and get to printing. From beginning to end, the HeyGears ecosystem has made resin printing so much simpler and way more interesting to me. So thank you to HeyGears for sponsoring this video and making me get out of my comfort zone and play around with this and see that maybe I was wrong about resin. Maybe it does have a place in my studio. I hope you folks found this video interesting. If you're interested in picking up the Reflex 2 or any of the hardware and resin I've shown, there's a link in the description to their website, as well as a discount code, save 50 bucks off your order. I of course also need to say thank you to Prusa Research and PCBWay for sponsoring MandicLabs 2.0. They keep the lights on. Thank you folks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking of resin printing in general and the Reflex 2 specifically. Get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. See ya.